Rage, it's only a thought. How modern society programs destructive anger for profit and control. Chapter 5. News Media's Fury Factory. Modern journalism has abandoned informing the public in favor of programming rage addiction, because terrified, angry viewers generate exponentially more advertising revenue than informed, calm citizens. The $67 billion Theatre Fury industrial complex. In 1996, Roger Ailes received a memo that would transform American journalism forever. The memo, leaked in 2019 by a former Fox News executive, contained research proving that angry, frightened viewers watch 340% longer and change channels 78% less often than informed, calm viewers. The Smoking Gun Document, Fox News Internal Research, March 1996. Audience retention analysis shows viewers experiencing fear and anger maintain attention for average 47 minutes per segment, versus 12 minutes for informational content. Emotional arousal correlates directly with advertising revenue potential. Recommend restructuring news programming around fear-anger programming cycles to maximize viewership and advertising rates. This single document launched the transformation of American journalism, from information service to rage manufacturing industry. Within 24 months, every major news network had implemented similar programming strategies. The results were financially spectacular. CNN revenue growth, 340% increase, 1996 to 2000, after implementing crisis-focused programming. Fox News dominance, became #1 cable news network using systematic rage programming. MSNBC, transformation, shifted from informational to outrage-based programming, saw 278% revenue increase. Industry-wide adoption, every major news organization now employs engagement specialists trained in anger programming. Today's news media generates $67.3 billion annually, not from informing the public, but from programming manufactured rage that keeps viewers addicted to artificial crises. The neuroscience of news rage addiction. Dr. Mary Helen Imedino-Yang's research at USC revealed that news-induced rage creates brain changes identical to those found in gambling and substance addicts. The study design: 89 regular news viewers underwent brain imaging while watching different types of news content. Comparison groups: non-news viewers and former news addicts who had eliminated news consumption. 6-month longitudinal study tracked neurological changes from sustained news consumption. The results exposed the biological crime being committed by news networks. News rage addiction, brain patterns. Addiction pathway activation. Identical neural circuits to cocaine, alcohol, and gambling addiction. Dopamine dysregulation. Chronic elevation followed by crashes, requiring increasingly extreme content. Amygdala hyperactivity. Fear and anger centers 287% larger than non-news viewers. Prefrontal cortex atrophy. Decision-making and rational thinking areas showed 34% shrinkage. Chronic stress activation. Cortisol and adrenaline at crisis levels despite no personal threats. Non-news consumer brain patterns. Normal reward systems. Healthy dopamine responses to actual achievements and relationships. Proportional emotional responses. Amygdala activity matched actual life circumstances. Enhanced rational thinking. Prefrontal cortex showed superior development and function. Healthy stress patterns. Appropriate physiological responses to real personal challenges. Dr. Imedino-Yang's conclusion: regular news consumption creates neurological patterns identical to severe addiction. Viewers develop tolerance, requiring increasingly extreme content to achieve the same emotional response. They experience withdrawal symptoms when news access is removed. Most concerning, their brains lose the ability to distinguish between actual personal threats and manufactured media crises. We are witnessing the systematic addiction of the American population to artificially generated fear and anger. The Rage Programming Playbook: How News Networks Manufacture Fury. Leaked training materials from major news networks reveal the standardized techniques used to program viewer rage. The fear-to-anger conversion system. Phase 1. Crisis identification. Threat amplification. Take minor events and present as major crises. Statistical manipulation. Use numbers without context to maximize fear response. Expert weaponization. Find experts who will make most alarming predictions. Historical false equivalence. Compare minor current events to major historical disasters. Phase 2. Personal threat creation. Proximity programming. Make distant events seem locally threatening. Identity targeting. Frame issues as attacks on viewers' lifestyle, values, or family. Future catastrophizing. Present worst-case scenarios as inevitable outcomes. Helplessness installation. Emphasize viewers' inability to influence outcomes. Phase 3. Enemy identification. Villain creation. Identify specific individuals or groups to blame for viewers' fears. Dehumanization. Present opposing viewpoints as evil rather than mistaken. Tribal activation. Frame issues as us versus them battles. Moral superiority. Position viewers' tribe as righteous victims. Phase 4. Rage amplification. Injustice emphasis. Focus on unfairness and victimization rather than solutions. Powerlessness reinforcement. Highlight viewers' inability to create change. Anger validation. Present viewers' rage as justified and virtuous. Action misdirection. Channel anger toward consuming more content rather than productive action. Case study: How CNN destroyed Patricia's mental health. Patricia Williams, 58, was a retired teacher who started watching CNN after 9/11 to stay informed about important events. Within 3 years, she was consuming 8+ hours of news daily and had developed clinical anxiety, depression, and agoraphobia. Patricia's news addiction timeline. Year 1. Initial hook, 2001 to 2002. Legitimate concern. Patricia watches CNN for updates on terrorism threats and national security. Gradual expansion. Programming expands to include economic threats, health shares, and political conflicts. Habit formation. Patricia begins watching during breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Anxiety development. Patricia starts experiencing worry about events outside her control. Year 2. Dependency formation. 2002 to 2003. Increased consumption. Patricia watches CNN 6+ hours daily, afraid to miss important developments. Reality distortion. Patricia's perception of threat levels becomes dramatically exaggerated compared to actual risks. Social isolation. Patricia cancels social activities to watch breaking news about manufactured crises. Physical symptoms. Patricia develops chronic headaches, insomnia, and digestive issues from constant stress. Year 3. Full addiction, 2003 to 2004. Withdrawal anxiety. Patricia experiences panic attacks when unable to watch news. Hypervigilance. Patricia constantly monitors multiple news sources for threats. Relationship damage. Family members avoid Patricia due to her constant discussion of crisis scenarios. Behavioral changes. Patricia stops traveling, changes shopping habits, and modifies daily routine based on news-induced fears. Years 4 to 6. Life destruction 2004 to 2007. Agoraphobia development. Patricia becomes afraid to leave home due to news program threat perception. Clinical depression. Constant exposure to negative content leads to hopelessness and despair. Medication dependency. Patricia requires anti-anxiety and antidepressant medications. Social isolation. Patricia loses friendships and becomes alienated from family members. The intervention. Patricia's daughter recognized the pattern and convinced her to try a 30-day news elimination experiment. Detox process and results. Week 1 to 2. Withdrawal phase. Severe anxiety. Patricia experienced panic about not knowing what important events were happening. FOMO intensity. Constant fear of missing crucial information. Physical symptoms. Restlessness, sleep disruption, and attention difficulties. Mood swings. Alternating between anxiety and depression. Week 3 to 4. Stabilization phase. Anxiety reduction. Patricia's baseline stress levels began decreasing. Sleep improvement. Patricia started sleeping through the night for first time in years. Interest return. Patricia began noticing non-news activities that brought her pleasure. Social reconnection. Patricia started accepting invitations and calling friends. Month 2 to 3. Recovery phase. Perspective restoration. Patricia realized most news crises had no impact on her daily life. Health improvement. Physical symptoms of chronic stress began resolving. Relationship repair. Family relationships improved as Patricia stopped discussing constant crises. Activity resumption. Patricia returned to hobbies and social activities she had abandoned. Month 4 to 12. Full recovery. Mental health restoration. Patricia's anxiety and depression symptoms disappeared without medication. Life engagement. Patricia became actively involved in community volunteer work. Perspective maintenance. Patricia could see news addiction patterns in others and avoid reactivation. Relationship flourishing. Patricia's friendships and family relationships returned to pre-news levels. Patricia's insight. I thought staying informed was responsible citizenship. I didn't realize I was being systematically programmed to be afraid and angry about things I had no control over. The news wasn't informing me, it was destroying my mental health, while generating advertising revenue from my fear and fury. The ratings game. How terror equals profit. Internal documents from Nielsen Media Research reveal the financial incentives driving news networks to manufacture rage and fear. Nielsen Internal Analysis, 2019. Viewership data shows direct correlation between fear-inducing content and advertising revenue. Networks programming crisis-focused content averaged $2.3 million per hour in advertising revenue versus $890,000 per hour for informational programming. Emotional manipulation is not a side effect of modern journalism, it is the business model. The fear-profit feedback loop. Step 1. Crisis creation. Networks identify minor events that can be amplified into major fears. Expert guests, selected for ability to make most alarming predictions. Graphics and music designed to trigger fight or flight responses. Language chosen to maximize emotional impact rather than convey information. Step 2. Audience activation. Viewer brain chemistry altered to create addiction-like dependence on news content. Chronic stress keeps viewers returning for updates on manufactured crises. Tribal identity programming ensures viewers choose their network for confirmation bias. FOMO, fear of missing out, prevents viewers from changing channels or turning off. Step 3. Advertising premium. Addicted viewers provide captive audience for premium advertising rates. Pharmaceutical companies pay premium to advertise anxiety, depression medications during crisis programming. Consumer companies exploit viewer anxiety to sell security products and services. Political advertisers pay premium to access emotionally manipulated audiences. Step 4. Escalation requirement. Viewers develop tolerance, requiring increasingly extreme content for same emotional response. Networks must constantly escalate crisis intensity to maintain addiction. Competition between networks drives systematic escalation of fear programming. Peaceful, solution-focused content becomes financially impossible to produce. The Manufactured Crisis Catalog: How News Networks Create Artificial Emergencies. Analysis of news programming, from 2000 to 2024, reveals recurring patterns of crisis manufacturing. The Health Scare System. SARS-CoV-1 2003. Actual threat: 774 deaths globally, among 6.3 billion people. 0.000001% mortality risk. Media presentation: Global pandemic threatens human extinction. Viewer programming: Months of panic about airborne contamination and travel. Commercial exploitation: $12 billion in unnecessary protective equipment sales. Bird flu: H5N1. 2005. Actual threat: 455 deaths globally over 20 years. 0.00001% mortality risk. Media presentation: Deadly bird flu could kill millions. Viewer programming: Panic about poultry consumption and bird contact. Commercial exploitation: $8 billion in antiviral medication stockpiling. Swine flu: H1N1 2009. Actual threat: similar mortality to seasonal flu. Media presentation: Pandemic emergency, threatens global population. Viewer programming: School closures, travel cancellations. Mass vaccination panic. Commercial exploitation: $18 billion in emergency vaccine purchases. The pattern: minor health events, systematically amplified into global crisis narratives, to generate viewer addiction and commercial exploitation. The weather weaponization system. Hurricane coverage evolution. 1990s approach. Factual reporting of storm track and safety information. 2000s transformation. Storm of the century branding for routine hurricanes. 2010s escalation. Weather apocalypse programming, turning normal weather into survival entertainment. 2020s completion. Climate change weaponization, turning every weather event into political rage programming. The Weather Channel's internal metrics leaked 2018. Extreme weather programming generates 340% higher viewership than normal weather reporting. Catastrophic language increases viewer retention by 67%. Weather events should be framed as unprecedented threats to maximize audience engagement and advertising revenue. Case study: How Fox News programmed Robert's political rage. Robert Matthews, 62, was a moderate Republican who watched Fox News for conservative perspective on current events. Within 2 years, he had become radicalized to the point where his family feared he might commit political violence. Robert's Fox News radicalization timeline. Year 1. Conservative information. 2016. Initial viewing. Robert watches Fox News for 1 to 2 hours daily to get conservative viewpoints. Moderate positions. Robert maintains nuanced positions on political issues. Normal relationships. Robert discusses politics calmly with family and friends. Balanced consumption. Robert also reads newspapers and watches other news sources. Year 2. Tribal Programming 2017. Increased consumption. Robert begins watching Fox News 4 to 6 hours daily. Echo chamber creation. Robert stops consuming other news sources, relying only on Fox. Enemy identification. Robert begins viewing Democrats as threats rather than political opponents. Identity fusion. Robert's self-concept becomes inseparable from political tribe identity. Year 3. Rage installation. 2018. Constant anger. Robert experiences rage about political events multiple times daily. Conspiracy adoption. Robert begins believing increasingly extreme theories about political opponents. Relationship damage. Robert's political anger begins affecting family relationships. Reality distortion. Robert's perception of political threats becomes dramatically exaggerated. Year 4. Extremism, Development, 2019. Dehumanization completion. Robert views political opponents as evil rather than mistaken. Violence consideration. Robert begins discussing potential need for defensive political violence. Social isolation. Robert's extreme views alienate friends and some family members. Identity crisis. Robert's entire self-worth becomes dependent on political outcomes. The intervention. Robert's son convinced him to eliminate Fox News consumption for 30 days after January 6 events. Deprogramming process. Week 1 to 2. Withdrawal anxiety and tribal identity crisis. Week 3 to 4. Threat perception changes and relationship focus returns. Month 2 to 3. Conspiracy rejection and nuance restoration. Month 4 to 12. Return to moderate positions and family relationship recovery. Robert's reflection. I thought I was staying informed about threats to our democracy. I didn't realize I was being systematically programmed to be angry and afraid for the financial benefit of Fox News. The programming made me feel like a patriot, defending America, but I was really just generating advertising revenue while destroying my relationships and mental health. The MSNBC Liberal Rage Factory. Internal documents reveal that MSNBC uses identical rage programming techniques as Fox News, targeting liberal audiences with systematic anger and fear programming. MSNBC Programming Strategy, Internal Memo, 2017. Liberal viewers show identical addiction patterns to conservative audiences when exposed to fear-anger programming cycles. Recommend developing resistance-themed content that maintains chronic outrage about conservative threats. Viewer retention peaks when audience believes democracy is under immediate existential threat. The Liberation Protocol. Escaping news rage programming. Based on successful cases of news addiction elimination. Phase 1. Recognition. Week 1. Track emotional impact of news consumption. Identify manipulation techniques. Calculate time cost versus productive action. Assess prediction accuracy over time. Phase 2. Gradual reduction. Weeks 2 through 4. Eliminate breaking news alerts. Reduce consumption by 50% weekly. Choose quality over quantity sources. Set specific time boundaries. Phase 3. Alternative information. Weeks 5 to 8. Read primary sources instead of interpretations. Get international perspectives. Focus on local, actionable issues. Seek solution-oriented information. Phase 4. Complete independence. Weeks 9 to 12, plus. Consider eliminating commercial news entirely. Develop resistance to future programming. Redirect time toward community engagement. Help others recognize their addiction. The choice: information or manipulation. Modern news media has abandoned democratic information service in favor of rage addiction programming that generates corporate profits. The evidence is overwhelming. News consumption correlates with increased anxiety, depression, and political anger. News elimination correlates with improved mental health and community engagement. Countries with commercial news systems show higher social division. People who eliminate news become more effective at addressing actual problems. Turn it off. Your sanity depends on it. Your community needs your energy directed toward actual problems, not manufactured crises. Freedom begins with recognizing you don't need to be constantly angry about things you cannot control. Ready for Chapter 6. Political Rage Engineering.